Hello, welcome to the Let's Talk Kids Health live show, episode 61. I'm Dr. Narissa Bauer, your host. As you know, I'm a behavioral pediatrician, and I'm here in Indianapolis. The concept of this show is to share information about behavioral health, parenting, and family wellness. Each week, I bring you topics and guests so that we can advance this mission and talk together. Let us know that you're here by commenting, asking questions, and liking at any time. And in a little bit, your questions will be asked of my guest. Now, the replay will be immediately available after the broadcast. We're also going to be rebroadcasting each episode every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So share this episode with anyone you think who would benefit. Now, if you don't want to miss future episodes or maybe check out some of my past ones, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Narissa Bauer MD, and follow my blog Facebook page, Let's Talk Kids Health, and join my free parenting discussion group. Now, today's topic is how to ease kids' worries about current events with Dr. Tanya Altmann. I'm going to be bringing her on screen here in just a little bit, but I wanted to let you know who is going to be joining us. She is amazing, and I'm so happy that she is able to come on live today. A working mother and UCLA-trained pediatrician who practices in Southern California, Dr. Tanya Altmann is a best-selling author, network television parenting expert, and entertainment industry and child product industry consultant. Dr. Tanya is an American Academy of Pediatrics spokesperson approved by the National Physician Organization to communicate complicated medical issues into easily understood concepts. Now, as a child health expert for numerous news programs and talk shows, including Today on NBC, Fox News Channel, KTLA 5 Morning News, and The Doctors, Dr. Tanya has discussed breaking medical news stories and controversial parenting issues. She is the founder of Calabasas Pediatrics, a new type of integrative pediatric practice for today's modern family. She's also an assistant clinical professor at UCLA Mattel Children's Hospital. She's the author of numerous parenting books to help concerned caregivers everywhere. Please welcome Dr. Altmann to the show. Let me bring her up. Hi.
Hi, Dr. Bauer. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much. And I couldn't think of someone better than you to talk about this topic. You know, we've been living through 2 years of some of the toughest times with the pandemic. And I know that just before we went live, you were talking about how you really love working with families around behavioral health, mental health. And we have seen a tremendous spike in those conditions. And now with the events happening in Ukraine, I mean, our kids are just bombarded with so many different things that I'm sure you're seeing, kids coming in with fears, worries, anxieties. And so I thought today we would just have a conversation about that. And maybe if you could just share some of your initial thoughts. But first, before you start, I'd love to have you just, add anything else that you want to about who you are.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, as you mentioned, I'm a pediatrician. I've been studying integrative health and mental health for kids because, as we know, that is so important, especially now. I'm also a mom. I have three boys. They are 16, 14, and 7. So yes, I am the oldest mom in first grade. But that's fun, and it keeps me young and understanding, what is going on with our little ones as well. And I see patients every day in my office, and my families, bring their concerns to me. I also, during COVID, started consulting for many schools across the country and doing school health, which of course the main focus was COVID for so long, but it's also mental health. It's also, what is going on everywhere with our kids, and what do they need now to get the best, support from everyone, whether it's parents, pediatricians, teachers, school administration, and mental health providers.
Hmm. I mean, that is so good. And I love the fact that you're doing this work in the community with the schools too, because schools are also facing questions about how to support these kids, because kids either at home or at school, right? And so helping support parents, educators, and everybody in the community is so great. I'm so glad that you are offering your voice to this. So I mean, maybe if we could start the conversation with just sharing kind of from your viewpoint, what are you seeing in terms of the effects of current events on kids?
Yeah, I mean, I think that more kids than ever now are, are worried, are anxious, are having trouble sleeping, having trouble with school. And, whether this was due to, the beginning of the pandemic and their concerns, not being able to go to school, being thrown back into school, still worried about maybe getting sick or not, or everything going on right now in the world, especially in Ukraine and how tragic everything over there is. I feel like a lot of kids are hearing about it. Our younger kids maybe hearing about it from older siblings or on the playground. Middle schoolers and high schoolers are hearing about it on social media, and high schoolers are actually also learning about it in their history classes now. I'm being told that most schools are addressing it as they should be. These are important conversations that we should be having, and I think it's really important for parents to realize that that this is something that they are going to need to talk to their kids about, and how to do that. I think is sort of the big question, right? Because parents
Yes.
turn to me and say, I noticed that my child is acting different, is playing different, is behaving different, or they're asking questions. What do I say?
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I guess if we can sort of break that down, because let's maybe start from the parent's perspective. I mean, how do they even know that it's something they need to talk to you about, right? How do these things present? What are some of the things that you're hearing?
So I think that's a great question. And I think if you have little kids, like let's say toddlers, preschoolers, I don't think you need to bring it up then, unless they are acting different, behaving different, or they are saying things that make you concerned that they, have heard that there's shooting or fighting or anything like that going on.
Yep.
Again, with the younger kids, you want to keep those screens off at home. They don't need to see what's on TV, what's on the internet. But once you get into school age kids, your kid, they're hearing about it. Now, so I would say, at dinner maybe, or sometime when you're sitting down with them, you can just say like, hey, so, has anyone said anything about what's going on in Ukraine? Have you heard anything?
Hmm.
You just kind of bring up that way. You don't have to say like, hey, have you heard about the war? Like, you don't
Yep.
need to use those words, but you want to just say, hey, have you heard anything? And look at their reactions and their expressions. And then, you just want to be honest and answer their questions. You don't need to provide more information than they ask or want to know, but you also, as a parent, you want to reassure them that they are safe, that there are all these adults here taking care of them. And then as your kids get older, that's when I think more details are really important. How does this make you feel? What are your friends talking about? What are you learning in school? What are you seeing on your social media feeds? I mean, my boys aren't that into social media. I don't know if it's because they're boys, because of it, I didn't allow it for so long in our home. But they talk about it in school, they know about it with their friends. But think about all the kids that are on social media and seeing about it and learning about it on TikTok. That may
Yes.
not be the best, way for them to learn about it, but it's putting ideas in their head and thoughts and questions. And as a parent, you're the one that wants to bring it up with them. Ideally, you don't want the first time that they hear about it to be from their friends in school or on social media.
Right. That is so true. And I think sometimes some parents are a little bit hesitant because they don't know, they don't want to cause anxiety or fear or worry because we want to keep our kids safe. However, you're right. I mean, if we don't talk about it, especially with our school age and teenagers, they're going to be hearing about it. And we don't want them to have misinformation. And we certainly want to make sure that they know that we're here to help them process it. Yeah, I love that. So again, you suggest, and what I like about what you just said was, just starting a conversation, during dinner, just, hey, what have you heard about Ukraine? And not using war, not using those big heavy words, and then following your child's lead. Um, in terms of like, when should a parent be concerned to then talk to you as a pediatrician about what they're seeing, like changes to their child's behavior? What are some of those red flags, maybe?
Yeah, and I think that's really important, to point out for parents to look for teachers to be on the lookout for. So again, any change in your child's behavior, no matter what age they are. So if you see changes in their sleep, changes in what they're doing when they're awake, changes in their eating, if they're being withdrawn, staying in their room more, if they're not wanting to, go to normal activities with their friends, Anything like that could be a red flag. Also, if their grades are slipping, if they say anything kind of different or unusual, and you're like, hey, why did you say that? What are you thinking? Where did it come from? And with the little kids, you'll often see change in their play, right?
Mm-hmm.
They might start playing differently because other boys on the playground were playing like shoot 'em up or something, and they hadn't really thought of that, and they're just learning it now. Although sometimes kids learn it in preschool anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think anything that concerns you, try to sit down and have a conversation with them, spend time with them. Um, Parents, I've had a lot of questions from parents lately saying, I just don't feel like my teen wants to talk to me. They don't want to connect with me. Like, what can I do to kind of be with them again? And one of the best pieces of advice I have is to find something your child likes to do, whether it's a video game or fashion or a sport, and learn about it, even if you don't like it, right? Even if you don't want to learn about robotics or you don't want to learn about, professional volleyball, you learn about it and you find a common thread to talk to your child about and start sending them cool information like, hey, look at this article I found on your favorite athlete. And then they'll kind of realize like, whoa, okay, I can talk to my mom. We're on the same level. She understands and has similar interests. And I think that's a good way.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I do, which is not for everybody, is I just walk into my teenager's room and I just like lay on their bed and I'm like, hey, I'm here. We're going to talk. And they'll be like, Mom, not now. All right, finish what you're doing, but I'm not leaving until we talk.
I love it. I do that too, but I love it because no matter what age, even though they're getting older, and I shared that my son's going to be 15 and we have similar age kids, like they still really enjoy our company, even though, they might put up a front about it. And it's especially at those times, like right at bedtime, when they're getting ready for bed, I find
Yeah.
that the easiest time to connect, or in the car.
I was just going to say in the car is really good as well, other than my oldest is driving right now. But yes,
Oh,
when they're not driving, when you're driving and they're in the car as passengers, that's a great time actually for any age to talk. I have some of the best conversations with my 7-year-old too
yeah.
when we're driving in the car, as long as they don't have their screens on. And I think it's important to say, even if you're a family that does do screens in the car, to say like, hey, you know what, we're going to not have the screens on right now because we just wanted to talk, or let's sing a song, on the radio or something to help bond. And I think that also brings up another point that I want to mention is that don't forget, now that we're all thrown back into school and activities and we're becoming overscheduled again, that it's really important to make sure that you still have family time.
Mm.
And whether it's playing a board game or going for a walk or actually this weekend, and you don't have to even do something this elaborate, but I said, you know what? We have not gone anywhere fun as a family like in 2 years. And I got last minute tickets to Imagine Dragons.
Oh,
And
wow.
and I said, we are leaving at 4 o'clock to go downtown. We're going to walk around, have dinner, and go to a concert. And we had a blast. And we hadn't done anything like that in so long. But it doesn't have to be elaborate like that. You could literally go to the park or go for a walk too. But it was like, hey, we're going to get back to like for my teenagers. Yes, you can hang out with mom and dad sometimes on a Saturday night.
I love that. I mean, with the pandemic and social distancing, just having that sense of normality again and being spontaneous. So, thanks for that reminder because I think, like you said, it doesn't have to be that elaborate, but we need to be intentional with carving out some family time to just connect. I
Yeah.
mean, I think, if I may, and I know, Dr. Tanya, you talk about this a lot, but this is a great kind of way to kind of insert into the conversation about adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, right? And that's definitely something that, the pandemic, the current events happening, all of these different traumas can be categorized under that. But this whole week, we're going to be talking about different things about why it's important to know about it, but also more importantly, what we can do about it. Because not everything about ACEs is doom and gloom, right? It is part of our life and fabric, but it's nothing that we can't overcome and continue to persevere. So, I guess I'm just inviting you to share your thoughts about ACEs and what parents can do about, kind of turning the tide, thinking about the positives.
Yeah, I mean, I think that our kids are going to be so much more resilient now, right? When you think about
Yes.
everything that they've been through the last few years. But for so many kids out there that maybe don't have parents to sort of teach them how to, navigate these situations, and that, and how to like turn the hardships into building resilience, it is going to be even harder, as you mentioned. And, when young kids have those, adverse conditions in their environment when they're young, it can be so hard to overcome. And that's why, I think mental health professionals are so important now at all ages. And so as a pediatrician, if I see parents or families that need more help, or if as a parent you feel that your kids need more help that you can't provide, which is totally fine. I don't know everything. We don't all know everything. I'm always reaching out to my mental health professional colleagues to say, hey, my kid did this unusual thing. How would you help me deal with that? And that's how I learn how to help my patients too. And so I think, it does take a village, and really identifying kids that are in need, whether it's your own kids or their friends or their classmates, and trying to get them help. Because you want to take these challenges that life throws at you and sort of figure out, like, why did this happen to me, and how can I learn from it and benefit from it and be stronger,
Yes.
in the future, and be able to handle events and things like this as they continue to happen and come. I mean, think about it, like, every few months there's something new that we're like, how can these things keep happening?
Yes.
And when we were growing up, and you're almost the same age as I am, I'm a little older, we weren't exposed to as much going on in the world, right? We didn't have the internet, we didn't have social media, we didn't have smartphones. So we only knew about what was going on in our own little bubble. And now our kids are being exposed to not only the hardships at home, but things going on across the globe. And the world's a lot smaller now. So there is so much more that we need to explain to our kids and teach them how to navigate.
Yeah. And I think too, that's such a great point. I mean, I think too, one of the things about social media and the fact that it's connected us, made the world smaller, it also makes it a little bit hard because we're bombarded like almost instantaneously about things as they're happening. So what I think sometimes is that as parents we're caught unawares, and then we're like, oh my gosh, what's happening, and then we don't really have a lot of that downtime to process for ourselves before we present like to our kids, then kind of more calm. And so I think if anything, the pandemic and everything that's been happening in the recent weeks, I think your suggestion about turning off news, turning off television, like not keeping it in the background first, just because those images, hearing all of these different stories in real time can be really traumatic for kids, and then making sure you have permission to sort of process your own thoughts and feelings as well, because kids can feel that.
They can. And I think that's a really good point, is that you need to take care of yourself first as a parent and a caregiver, right? So if you're feeling stressed, anxious, step away. It's okay if your child brings something up to say, like, you know what, I don't know the answer to that, but let mommy have some time, or I'm going to take some time to research it, find out what's going on, and get back to you. But don't worry. My job as a parent is to worry. I'm always saying that, like, your job is not to worry about this. That is my job to worry about. So you do school activities, whatever you need to do. And I will figure out, what we need to know as a family and how we're going to handle this and get through it.
Mm-hmm.
And then that can give you some time to sort of like, do research and figure it out. Because sometimes my older kids learn stuff about what's going on in the world before I do on social media, because they might see it. I might be busy, with patients, working, and they'll come to me and I'll say, oh, I wasn't aware. Let me look into it. Let me talk to dad. My husband's always more into the current events than I am, as an attorney and history fan. And then, let's reconvene. Let's talk about it tonight at dinner. And, when we really have more time to process this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so great. And again, I mean, sometimes you can say, you know what? I actually didn't hear about this yet. I need to go find out some facts. I love that, because I think sometimes otherwise we're like, oh, really? What have, let's start looking at the phone. Let's start looking at, so I think like trying to remember that you can sort of put a little bit of distance, put some pause, but then promise your kids you're going to come back and revisit that.
Yes. And don't panic in front of them, whatever you do, right? And the other thing with little kids is you don't want to whisper, because they're always listening. And when they hear you talk quieter, they think, ooh, this is something important that I'm not supposed to know. It's a secret. And so, make sure that you save adult conversations for really when it's only adults or teenagers, whatever age group they are, and otherwise, be honest with them and be appropriate, and definitely always, always age appropriate. So being mindful of how old your kids are.
Mhm.
And it's also important sometimes to remind other caregivers. I know sometimes my 7-year-old will say, oh, so and so, or my babysitter said this, mom. And I'm thinking, like, she shouldn't have said that to him. Okay, I remember that. I need to talk to her then about, because not everybody knows what's appropriate, for all age kids. And even
Mhm.
sometimes at school, sometimes I'm, telling principals, like, hey, I heard the teacher was talking about this in first grade. Like, are you sure maybe you should have sent an email to the parents first? Because I'm worried the parents now aren't going to know how to handle it when the kids get home with questions.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. I mean, trying to be as proactive as possible so that way what your children are hearing from those people that they're going to be around is trustworthy and presented in a child-friendly way, or maybe reserved so that way parents can have the conversation first. Yeah.
Exactly. I think giving parents a heads up is always a good idea, because it's always best, just like sex ed, right? You want your
Yes.
kids to learn it from you first before they learn it from their friends at school in the playground, or even in class, right? They shouldn't be hearing it for the first time in class,
Hmm.
because you don't know how they are going to react.
So, can I ask, just for parents who get that, but they're still unsure, like, well, gosh, I'm not even sure how to start the conversation. Do you have any tips for just starting these conversations? Like, let's say about Ukraine or any current event.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, the first thing is you want to read up a little bit on it from a legitimate news source,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And just so you know factually what's going on. You don't have to have an opinion yet, although I think pretty much everyone's opinion is that the war is bad and it shouldn't be happening, right?
Hmm.
So I think we all can agree on that, no matter what your politics are, and that what's going on there is really horrible and tragic. And I think it hits so close to home for so many of us, because we know people who have family there, who used to live there, or whatever it is. So I think figure out the facts and then sit down with your family, whether it's in the car, dinner, whatever we talked about, and just start with, like, so, have you guys heard anything about what's going on in Ukraine? Do you have any questions? Do you want to talk about it? And your kids might say, yeah, one of my friends said that, like, that, a hospital was bombed, or, one of, and whatever it is, you can say, like, wow, that's so sad. Do you know, like, why that happened? And you just kind of start the conversation from that point. And you don't have to offer new information. You just have to answer their questions and make sure that they feel safe and supported. Like, you can't promise that it's not going to happen here, but
Hmm.
you can say, while it is very far away, we have these friends who have family there. Oh, your great grandparents were from there, and
Hmm.
that's actually why they fled during a different war. And you can talk about things like that. And you can say, in most countries, we have all of these checks and balances in place with our leaders, so they can't make these decisions on their own. And so things like this, can't happen. And this is what we're doing to sort of stay safe where we are.
Hmm.
And there's different ways to sort of talk about it. And again, like, I always sometimes bring my husband in, like, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that, because I didn't study all of that in school. I was more math and science, and he was definitely more politics. So let's get his opinion on, what happened and how this one person could have made this decision on their own.
Yeah.
But I think really just answering their questions, and being there for them and letting them know that they are safe. um,
Hmm.
assuming they are safe. Depending on where you live around the world, you may not be safe, but mom and dad are going to be here to do the best they can to protect you. And if you have any questions, if you feel scared, please come to us. We will try to help. We have all these layers of protection and all these different people around,
Hmm.
that are going to help keep us safe.
Hmm. Thank you. I think those are some really tangible parenting tips right there that hopefully folks that are watching will be like, okay, okay, I can do this. I can do this, because it's really important to be the ones to start that conversation. And do you do you think, like, in terms of following their lead, is this like a one and done situation, or like how do you bring it up? Like, how frequently should parents be bringing this up?
I think that's a really great question, is that follow-up is important, right? So
Yes.
we'll have that initial discussion. Maybe you want to give your kids some time to process it. And for some kids, it might be a few hours. Some kids, it might be a few days or a week. And then just sort of sit down and say, hey, I just want to kind of revisit, what we talked about Sunday night at dinner. Any other thoughts? Have any of your teachers brought it up? Have you talked about it in history class? Which, by the way, the high schoolers are talking about it in school every day in their classes, which I think is very important.
Mm-hmm.
Younger kids are probably just hearing about it from their friends, and on social media, which isn't always the best thing, as we talked about. So you can kind of revisit it, and for the younger kids, if they're really little, again, I don't know that I would bring it up unless they're showing you that their behavior is different or they have questions, because they don't necessarily need to know if they're, toddlers and preschoolers.
Right, right. That's excellent advice. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to add to this conversation? I think you've given the audience so many things to think about, especially right now. Thank you for sharing your voice and thoughts on that. But is there anything else that you'd like to add for the audience?
I think I would want to remind parents that, your pediatrician is always a great resource, right? So if you aren't sure how to answer your kids' questions, if your kids are doing anything concerning, if their behavior is changing, their grades are changing, call your pediatrician and say, hey, I've noticed something concerning with my child. Do you have any advice, any recommendations? Because even if we don't have the answer, we can point you towards that resources. You know what, I think this therapist might be good to talk to, or at your school, this counselor is really amazing. Or why, I'm hearing some red flags from you. I actually do want to see your child in the office this afternoon after school. Just bring them and tell them it's a regular checkup. Don't tell them what it's for. And let me have a conversation with your child. And then I can try to see if I think this is something that really needs further attention.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. So inviting parents everywhere, that if you're concerned, always think about, talking with your pediatrician. They're your one go-to, your first go-to, because they can help figure out whether or not anything else needs to be done, and they can also have a discussion with your child in a child-friendly way. So, yeah, so thank you for that. And again, where can people find you, Dr. Altmann? Because I know you're everywhere, but do you have a resource or a website that you want to share?
Sure. So on social media, my handle is at Dr. Tanya Altmann with two N's. Pretty much everywhere: Instagram, Facebook. I don't think I'm on TikTok. I don't really dance and point very much, but and I also have a website, drtanya.com, and my office is calabasaspeds.com. I'm happy to help. I'm happy to answer questions, happy to point you in directions of resources in your area, if you're having trouble finding them. And so thank you so much, Narissa. It was great being on here with your community, and I always learn so much from you as well.
Thank you. And I'm just going to put in a plug. I have been following Dr. Tanya's social media. She does some wonderful Instagram reels that are super informative and fun. So, they are quick to the point. And so make sure you follow her on the social media platforms. She's got such good content.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Likewise.
you're welcome. You're welcome. And just to let you guys know, next week, I'm going to be talking to friend Dr. Trish Hutchinson, who we are going to be talking everything puberty. She also just had a new book released, or will be having one released, from the American Academy of Pediatrics, Uology. So I'm so excited about that. And so please tune in next week at 2 p.m. And like I said, this full episode is immediately available on YouTube and Facebook, and it will be rebroadcast Thursday night at 8 p.m. So if you know of anybody who should watch this, please share. Let them know, because Dr. Tanya gave us some wonderful tips on how to ease your child's fears around current events. Until then, thanks so much for watching. Take care.